Hello and welcome to we call it the hierarchy or the organization of an ecosystem. Part of this unit on ecosystems, on ecology, is really about understanding how the different ecosystems are organized between organisms and how they're organized as groups. So we're going to talk about both of those sets. So for starters, let's talk about the relationships in organisms. Okay, so it starts off at the lowest level of organism. So in this, let's say we're talking about an aquatic ecosystem or aquatic biome. Okay, so we're going to pick for an aquatic biome. We're going to pick a specific ecosystem. So we're going to say Jordan Lake, the Jordan Lake ecosystem. Okay, so inside of that ecosystem, what would be an organism? So if we're talking about at Jordan Lake, let's not use Jordan Lake. Let's use Lake Norman because that's local here. So if we're talking about a biome, that biome would be the aquatic biome, a water biome. If we're talking about a specific ecosystem, that means a specific part of the aquatic biome or the water biome. So we're going to say Lake Norman. So in Lake Norman, you've got a lot of different things going on there. Let's start out at the basic level. So in Lake Norman, if we're talking about just the relationships of organisms, we're going to talk about a specific organism. So we'll say catfish. So in Lake Norman, there's catfish. So if we're at the organism level, the hierarchy of organisms, the relationship of the organisms, we're going to start with the catfish. Okay? From the catfish, we go to a population. So if we're talking about the organism in the biome, we're talking about the catfish. If we're talking about the population, we're talking about all the catfish in that lake. So organism is the single animal or plant. Population is all of that same kind. So organism is catfish. Population is all the catfish in that lake. When we get to the community level, this is where the other species come in. So we've got the catfish organism. Then we've got all of the catfish in Lake Norman. That's population. Now, a community is made up of different populations. So it's got the population of catfish. It's got the population of seaweed, a plant that's still a species. It's got a population of water bugs that float on top of the water. It's got a population of bass. It's got a population of birds, specific birds. So let's say the cormorant, which is a diving bird. It goes into the flies and then dives into the water. All of these are populations. All of these together make up a community. And then from community, we've got organism, the catfish, population, all the catfish in the lake, community, all of the populations in the lake. So the plant populations, the fish populations, the bird populations, the insect populations all make up a community. And then that all the different communities around that lake make up the lake ecosystem. All of the different ecosystems, which include the communities and the populations and the organisms, make up the biosphere, which is the big picture of the earth. Okay? The area where organisms live. Now, this is the hierarchy of organisms. So we start with a single organism, a group of that one organism, that's population, and then community, a lot of different populations, many different animals, ecosystem, many different communities together, and then biosphere, many different ecosystems together. So that's the organism hierarchy. Then we jump to the biosphere itself. Okay, so the biosphere itself, we're going to talk about not just the animal, but the role that it plays in the biosphere or in the ecosystem. So we start with the organism. We're not going to name an organism because we're really just talking about its location, what it's doing. So you've got an organism. Then that organism has a specific niche. And what a niche is is it takes in that place where it lives, it eats a specific thing, it drinks a specific amount of water, it has a specific amount of protection, coverage, place for it to stay, and it has a specific animal that feeds off of it. Okay, no two animals can be in the same niche, because then they would be competing, and eventually one of them would either die out or it would adapt and change so that it's in a different niche. So the niche is where the organism lives, what it eats, what it drinks, where it sleeps, how it protects its young. That's its niche. In a habitat, you got all of the niches. So, if we're talking about a grassland, how the field mouse interacts with the snake, interacts with the bird, the eagle. All of these different niches make up the habitat that these animals live in. Now, when you talk about a lake habitat, or when we're talking about a lake ecosystem, we're talking about Lake Norman. We just finished talking about Lake Norman. You've got the land habitat around the lake. You've got the surface of the lake, which is a different habitat because that's where the insects can tend to be. You've got the shallow water habitat, which specific fish like that. Then you have the deep water habitat and some specific animals like that. So you got all of these different habitats where all of these different animals fit into these different categories. So we start with the organism that has a niche. The niche fits into a habitat. All the habitat is all the different niches of the different animals. And then from the habitat, we get the ecosystem. So we talked about how the Lake Norman ecosystem has a land habitat around it. It has the surface habitat, surface of the water. It has the shallow water habitat. It has the deep water habitat. So you got all these habitats in this one ecosystem, the Lake Norman ecosystem. Well, people tend to confuse ecosystem and biome. They are not the same thing. So let's talk about how they are different. So we've got biomes. There are only 5 biomes. The aquatic biome, the desert biome, the forest biome, the grassland biome, and the tundra biome. Now, some of those are going to be, like tundra. Tundra is tundra. There's not a lot of adjustment or differences to that. But grasslands, there's a lot of differences. You've got prairies, you've got savannas. So grassland is the big picture biome. The ecosystem would be Midwestern United States grasslands or prairies. It would be the African savanna. It would be the grasslands that make up the taiga, the grasslands that make up the Russian area over in Russia. So you've got all of these different grassland types. Those would be ecosystems. Grassland is the biome. Forest could be a temperate forest. It could be a temperate rainforest. It could be a tropical rainforest. It could be a boreal forest. So forest is the biome. Ecosystem is narrowing that down. Desert, there are different types of desert. There are cold deserts. There are hot deserts. A desert isn't determined by the temperature. The desert is determined by how much water it gets. So it can be very, very cold and still be a desert because it doesn't get very much water. Aquatic biome, that could be a lake, that could be a river, a pond, a marsh, that could be an estuary, could be an ocean, could be a sea. So that's the big picture, aquatic biome, and then you get to ecosystem, you're narrowing that down. So we're talking about the Lake Norman ecosystem, or the Yadkin PD River ecosystem, or we're talking about the Mount Mitchell ecosystem. So Mount Mitchell is a very specific type of forest, and it's really only found on the east side of the United States at Mount Mitchell. It's not found any other place. So, we're talking about very specific, the Piedmont of North Carolina is kind of a mixture of forest and grassland. So you're going to have to decide which side of that you're going to talk about. So when we talk about ecosystem and biome, a lot of times we'll cross those two words, but really they're two different things. Biome is the big picture, all of the aquatic biomes. Ecosystem would be a specific part of that biome, a river, a lake, an ocean. So you guys just finished the IB project. So you were talking about a biome, the aquatic biome, but you were asked to focus on an ecosystem, the Atlantic Ocean. Do you see the difference? And then the 5 biomes make up the biosphere. I hope that helps you understand a little bit about relationships and organization in organisms and in the biosphere. If you have any questions, please come see me on Microsoft Teams. Have a great day.